Hello, this is Harvey Micel. Thank you for your interest in learning more about the LKDN Fraternal Education Initiative. The following video and PowerPoint is the one used when I present the information to fraternal groups. You'll see the notes for each slide, which gives you an idea of what I discuss when the presentation is made. I hope after watching this, you will want to learn more about this important initiative. Thank you.
I guess good midday, everyone. First question that I have is just want to make sure everyone can hear me. So please, if someone can raise their hand, which is up at your dashboard, just to make sure. All right, thank you. Fortunately, I've had starts that people did not hear me. But welcome, everyone. I really thank you for attending, and I'm very, very excited about this new initiative and appreciate your interest. I want to do a little housekeeping first because what I've not done before is use this service with the notes of my PowerPoint presentation. So I want to make sure that you're able to see everything that's on my screen. I think you'll have to make a couple of adjustments that are there. So let me switch to that. And so you can make two adjustments. If you look at the top left-hand side of your screen, you'll see that there's a webcam. You can make an adjustment in the webcam, size it, put it on the left side, up, top, down, and you'll have to play with that to see what might work best for you. If you get rid of the webcam, don't worry about it. That's fine. I don't know if you get rid of it or not, but you can push it around. So you may have to size your window also, and that's in the Zoom. And it's one of the choices at the top, one of the menu bars, top left. Yeah, I don't have it on mine, but it's in the top there. Hit Zoom, and I've played with it both with a PC and a Mac, and it seems like if you put it at 90%, that seems to work fairly well. So if you could take a look and size it and see if you can see my screen. Now, another thing that you can do with the screen is that you can move your mouse up and down and left and right. You can grab the window and move it around also. So scrolling your mouse, you don't have to click your mouse, you just move it up and down, and hopefully you'll be able to get all of the information that's there. Let's see, I'm gonna put all hands down. So are there any problems? If you are having problems, again, raise your hand and I'll try to kind of go over that a little bit more or give you another second or two to make sure you can fit it there. So, okay, everyone looks like they're pretty much set. Okay, good. I'll go ahead then. Well, let me give you a little bit of background about myself. Many of you may not know. It'll be very brief in terms of my personal background and my interest with LKDN. My first transplant was in 2007. My wife donated to me. I have PKD. I'd known about it for many years. And finally, I needed a transplant. I'd been a volunteer for my local OPO, so I'd watched the waiting list do what it did for almost 20 years. And I knew I would pursue a living donor if it ever got to that point. And when it did, I started looking for an organization that can kind of help me understand living donation, but most importantly, how did I go about asking somebody to donate? It was a terrifying thought. So I looked around for an organization, did not find one, did not get much help from my transplant hospital about going through the process. And so I learned myself. I was very fortunate that my wife was able to donate, and we had a very good experience. We both recovered quickly. And shortly after, I realized that from what I learned, I could help a lot of people. So I started LKDN. Our primary mission is to help people who need a kidney transplant understand living donation and become successful at it. I've helped hundreds of people through the process. So things were going well for me, but then I developed a virus called a BK virus. And 5 years after the transplant, I needed another one. BK virus attacks the kidney, and there's no treatment for a virus. They kind of move your immunosuppressant drugs around, and it became a problem for me. So in 2012, I started looking for another donor. And after 5 years of telling people how to go about the process, how to take my own advice, which is not very easy to do. But I did, started my campaign, and women who I'd been in touch with in the Northwest Coast, just a couple of times on Facebook. She had a web page also, or a Facebook page promoting organ donation. And so she knew about my need. And then someone from outside of Detroit, Stephen, contacted her and told her he was interested in donating. She said, "Oh, you need to speak to Harvey. He's doing this and he needs another transplant." Lo and behold, Stephen ended up being my donor. It was a process for us, but we were involved in a three-way paired exchange. And Stephen's on the call today, which I'm very excited about. He wants to continue helping others as he's done. He's been helping on my webinars all the time. So he's been great support, and obviously I owe a lot to him, but we're great friends, and so are our families right now. So a little bit of my experience there. And I've spoken to many Rotary, Kiwanis, chambers, religious organizations. I've not put chambers and religious organizations in on this right now, but they are a very logical extension, and we'll talk about that a little more. Some OPOs have also talked to fraternal organizations, but I don't think too many. They are a great group to speak to. They have meetings every week. They're looking for people to speak, and they like this topic. And another opportunity is that many times they have a guest at where I'm speaking or where I spoke, and then they want me to come to their group. So it's a good opportunity to really reach a lot of people, and that's why I'm putting my effort towards this right now. So I'm having another session on Monday. And so if you know someone or that you think would be interested, we're going to do the same thing on Monday. And so you can certainly refer them at that time. I'm going to be looking occasionally on the right-hand side. You can raise your hand. You can also type in a question, so I'll look there. And I'm going to open up all the mics. At least I'm going to try to open up all the mics. All right, here we go. I need to do it one by one. It'll take me a second. Now, if there's noise coming from your side, you can mute yourself. Again, it's right over there at the on the dashboard. Another second or so, and I'll get everybody. All right. So all the mics are open, and I encourage you to ask questions during my presentation. It should be open. Hopefully, it goes in both directions. And a little easier for me, talking into a webcam is not the easiest thing. I don't know if anyone has done that before. For you recipients out there who are taking blood pressure meds or some of the immunosuppressant drugs, you'll understand my need to drink every now and again. So let me switch the screen for a minute and go to our website. This is the link, and over here is the link you can go to get to the Fraternal Education Initiative information. And here's what you'll find. And I want to go over it briefly because it's a fair amount of support information that's here, and I want you to go to it also. So a little intro there. The first click is going to take you to a SurveyMonkey. I want to learn a little bit more about the people that are going to be doing this, so I encourage you to do that. And that's the first bullet here also. What we have here is for someone to register for next week's session. And after that, I will put a recording of one of these sessions on there so people can listen to it, because I'm not going to allow anyone to proceed unless they listen to or are involved in this, because the training is so important and I want to support people in the best way that I can. The next one is an attachment that I think you should use when reaching out to fraternal groups. And I have two things there. One, I've penned an email of introduction that you can use, and there'll be an attachment to give them more information. We'll get into how we're going to reach out to the fraternal groups, but you'll see a lot of that when you fill out the SurveyMonkey. But the idea is one of a couple of different ways. One is I'll know where you live, the town you live in, and I've spoken to connections to many of the fraternal groups. There's a whole list on there that you'll see. And so I can give you the name of the group that's near you, and hopefully, and I'm working with the corporate office of all the fraternal groups right now in trying to get not only the name of the group that's near you or in your town or wherever you want to go, but the contact name, phone number, email address to make it that introduction a lot easier. There'll also be a PDF of this presentation that I'm making today. And I didn't give you this presentation with the notes, but what I will email it to you later today. But what I will do is you'll see the notes and you'll see which slide we're on. So if you want to sit there and take notes based upon a slide, it'll be really just as easy as you having it there. But I thought it would work better if everyone was working off the same presentation. There's an introductory email down here, and then you'll see this. But when you go somewhere, it's nice to give whoever's going to introduce you a little bit of a bio. So I've given you an outline how you can do that. And also, I would encourage you to thank them after a day or two. Send them an email. I've put one together for you. And the last bullet is some communication and presentation ideas that you could kind of work on yourself. And we'll talk about hopefully doing more of those at some future time. So let me go back. I don't know if we have any questions. Raise your hand, speak up at this time. Please don't be shy. All right, so here's the presentation. At the bottom, hopefully you can all read the notes that are there. And I distinguish the different notes or how I'll be presenting this. Something in italics or in brackets is not really for the presentation, but it's more of an idea of something for you to be aware of, and you'll get the idea as we go. But as the first one says, you want to personalize this to the group that you're speaking to. And before you go there, one of the things that you want to do is to speak to the group and get an idea. Is it 15 minutes? Is it 20 minutes that they have you speak? They're all a little bit different. And they usually have you speak after lunch or after breakfast, and you're the last thing that they do. And then they end it shortly after. Just about every single time I've been there, I've needed to stay because there are an incredible amount of questions that people have, sometimes very good questions that are there. Practice, I mean, that makes sense, but even for myself, this is the first time I've done this presentation, so I practiced a little bit, and so I certainly encourage you to do the same. You can put index cards or carry them to give you reminders of what you might want to say in certain areas, and as you go along, certainly it'll get a lot easier. I would encourage you, if you know someone that wants to do it with you, sure, go ahead and do the presentation together. So that might be great, and you would introduce each other, you'd work that out. After you're introduced and that you will have given them bio, you might want to enhance it a little bit. Maybe talk about some conversation you had with that person before, or something to kind of bond you with the group in some way. Sometimes I've asked people to raise their hand if they know someone that had a transplant or know someone that donated. Again, trying to bond you a little bit or make it a warmer environment. That sometimes works. Sometimes it's a distraction, and then someone raises their hand, they want to talk about it, and you can't get them to sit down. So you'll find your own way, certainly, when you're making the presentation. And remember, it's not about me. It's not about you. It's about educating people, and we don't want to get thrown off course. So very quickly, after I'm introduced, I ask everyone to raise their hand if they're registered to be an organ and tissue donor. And always, I've never had it otherwise, just about everybody raises their hand. And I compliment the way we've educated everyone in the U.S. about registering to be an organ and tissue donor. We've done a great job at that. Okay, and then I'll say briefly, but we haven't done as good a job regarding living donation, and more work needs to be done there. Now I'm going to be looking down a lot at the notes. I've done the presentation, similar to this many times, so obviously I'm pretty comfortable with it, but I want to look down because I want to make sure I kind of cover the things that I've written. And every time I do the presentation, it's different. You don't always say this, you don't always say that, and I want to make sure that I cover everything that's here. So let's go to the next. And if I'm off in a way or the slides move, let me know about that. And try not to read each line of a slide. The idea is to enhance it. They can read it. Sometimes it's okay, but even I try not to, as I'm looking up at the slide, try not to read exactly what is there for each one. So briefly, I'll tell what the primary mission is of LKDN, how we help those in need of a kidney transplant, and one of our other goals is to educate the public. And so here, I want to give them an overview of living donation, and I do want to talk about non-directed donation. I'll kind of mention it early on in the process, but I won't say too much about it until I get a little further on. Okay. All right. The waiting list. Now, this is something that usually will elicit questions from people. That is there. And I talk about all organs. I talk about kidneys. I usually don't bring out anything else. I talk a little bit about kidney dialysis patients, that many of them, and maybe even most of them, were good candidates when they first started dialysis, but health deteriorates, and after a while, they're not healthy enough. That's there. And I talk about the number of people who die every year waiting for a transplant. I'll briefly mention that if you're not registered to be an organ and tissue donor, here's a website you can go to, and they will give you your state, and they'll switch you to your DMV that's there. I'll talk about statistics, and as of late, they have not been very good for living donation. So I'll talk about the total number of transplants, break out the living and deceased, and explain to them that there's a long wait for a kidney transplant. In some places, it is 10 years or even more. That's their medical condition certainly dictates that. But we're at the lowest level now in terms of living donor transplants since 2000. It's really quite shocking. 8 of the last 10 years, the number of transplants have gone down. And we don't have a good reason why. I would welcome hearing from you if you can present a good reason why. The only reason that I've heard that makes sense is that over the years, transplant hospitals are becoming more selective in approving a living donor. And so, I've heard that from many people. I even had some people that even on the phone, they were discounted, just, giving them their verbal history or not. So, that certainly is something that's there, but not that it's reduced by this much over the years. And obviously, I'll leave that in education. This is one of the reasons why we need to continue to educate people. This slide needs some work. I apologize. I thought I'd have it done, but I don't. But it really, the chart speaks for itself. You don't even have to look at any numbers or give any numbers. But that's the blue line is the number of people that have been added on the waiting list. The red line is the number of deceased donor kidney transplants, and the yellowish green line is the number of living kidney transplants. I may split it up, but this really, I think, is good enough, but I'll try to work on it and get a little bit of a better look at it. You can talk briefly about the benefits of a living donor versus one from a deceased donor. The term I use is that how I describe it in terms of the most significant benefit is a kidney from a living donor lasts on average twice as long as one from a deceased donor. So, and the numbers are around 8 years for a deceased donor and about 17 for a living donor. I'll get into the cost a little bit, not that much. I might just say we would save billions of dollars because it's so much more expensive for someone to stay on dialysis year after year after year, where a transplant is a little more expensive in the first year. But even when you take into effect the immunosuppressant drugs, it's still much less expensive on the long run. Let's see, and also, most people on dialysis do not work. They really are a drain on society, and the quality of life is not very good. It's a very unfortunate human story in terms of people on dialysis. And in theory, we have virtually an unlimited number of potential living donors. Matching, again, I try not to spend too much time on because it can be a tremendous distraction for people. So I try to get through it fairly quickly and trying to just make a few points. That the matching process isn't as important as it used to be because of the drugs that we take post transplant. I do bring up that quite a few people are not compatible with the person that they want to donate to, about 30%. And I will set up that if a donor is incompatible, then they can get involved in a paired exchange. And I'll hold off to the next slide. And this is where my guess is that you can get hung up, because it is a little confusing to people that have never heard of a paired exchange before. So I'll describe, an incompatible recipient and donor. They can join other or a pool of other incompatible pairs so they can get matched up. Let's see, anything else there? Yeah, it could be time consuming here, because that simple concept sometimes doesn't get grasped as quickly as you like. Maybe you can come up with another way of describing it. I put this up and tell them it's just a simple paired exchange. You have donor 1 not compatible with their intended recipient. Same thing with donor 2. So a hospital can do a paired exchange, and they just get donor. You'll receive a transplant from another donor from an incompatible pair. The largest one they did on these was 30 pairs, which is still truly amazing. So that's it. Any questions on that in terms of covering it? Okay. The second kind of paired exchange is called a domino paired exchange. And this one starts with someone who wants to donate but doesn't know anyone that is in need of a kidney transplant. And they start these paired exchanges, okay? These individuals are called non-directed donors. And this is similar to the previous slide, except we put in the non-directed donor over here. And the reason we need this non-directed donor, because in this scenario, donor 2 is not compatible with either of the other recipients that are there. And if you have extra donor, you need another recipient. And then I use the arrows, so donor 1 donates to recipient 2, donor 2 to recipient 3, and this non-directed donor donates to recipient 1. I'll walk through it. And an interesting fact about donor recipient 3 is they come from the waiting list, which is a very nice surprise for that individual. And I'll reference, they call the non-directed donor the domino because they make all of the others fall into place. So that's the scenario here. And I'll explain, I use 3 pair, could be 4 pair, 5 pair, no limit as to how many. And in fact, that 30 pair was started by a non-directed donor. And so technically it was a domino paired exchange. The third type of paired exchange is similar to one we just described. I'll call back this screen, and I'll say the one difference is that we don't bring in someone from the waiting list. Okay, so we have an extra donor here. Donor 2 doesn't have anyone to donate with here, so this donor, now donor 2, will play the role of the non-directed donor in another, they call them chains. And that chain may occur next week, next month, and the next chain could be 4 pair, could be 5 pair, could be 6 pair. So this is, very, very powerful, because one non-directed donor, in theory, could benefit an unlimited number of people. And this is the point where there are usually some questions and pretty hard to avoid here, because you'll see the hands shoot up, and you'll just have to take it and and see how far you can take it with them, so it's just not using up all of your time, because you really do want to finish. And you can say, let's please leave the questions for later, more questions, because I'll be staying and be able to answer them. Also, wanted to mention earlier, it's a good thing for you to ask the person that invited you, if it's a 15-minute presentation or 20, whatever it is, if he could, kind of wave to you when there's just a few minutes left, instead of him standing up, thank you very much. It's kind of helpful, because you're not paying attention to the time. It's not an easy thing to do. So that's a good thing to work on. Okay, sorry. So that's the kind of the end of that. And to show how powerful these non-directed donors are, in 2012 they did a study, and one non-directed donor resulted in 5 people getting a transplant, 5 lives saved. It really is quite powerful. In fact, the exact number is 4.8 and 6 for someone that has an O blood type. Being the universal blood type, they can benefit more people. I don't think it's helpful to get into that. You can just kind of say 5 lives and go on. And why do non-directed donors donate? That's often a question. And there are a couple, I think 2 or 3 slides where I make a note, that this is not an essential slide. If you're not comfortable talking about it, or you think a time issue might be there, I take it away and not include it. But I'm often asked, and what I've heard over the years from donors that I've spoken to and other people is that there are primarily three reasons. One is they're just a nice person. They want to help someone else. We know individuals like that just go about their life in that way. Another reason that I hear a lot is they've seen suffering. They've had a friend, family member, or heard of someone dying, maybe of a kidney ailment, maybe something else, and not that they're looking to donate to honor that person or in honor of that person, but they know the suffering and want to donate. And the third reason that I hear a lot is their faith. Faith is a very important part of their life, and that they feel very strongly that this is something that they need to do. I talk about knowledge is power. People in the world pretty much know that line. And what it is really is the power to educate what we are doing, the power to make a change, and really the power to save lives. I try to describe this. This is another slide that if you're not comfortable working through, you can certainly remove it, or if you want to add some slides and information. If you're looking to add information, I'd appreciate if you just kind of send it to me. It may help others also. So I tell them the status quo is not working. Status quo is the waiting list right now. That's not providing enough organs, and neither is living donation. So we really need to make changes. And there are two areas where people are working, not hard, but talking about it at least in terms of making a change. One is to pay people to donate. I don't think that's ever going to happen. It's very controversial. Whenever you hear that, that someone wants to discuss it, people that are against it intentionally use the word repugnant. Just the thought of selling body parts. So it's a very hard thing to get going. And there's never been, to my knowledge, a serious proposal by any organization for compensating people. So it's very hard. Once I'm involved with an ethics group, and we wrote a white paper that'll be published in the next couple of months, that it's ethical to study compensating people. And even putting that together, once you get into the weeds, there's so many issues to overcome. Very, very difficult. The other that's talked a lot is presumed consent. We have a system where you need to opt in to donate. Presumed consent is where everyone is a donor unless you opt out. And there's some, talk about some countries doing better, European countries doing better because they have a presumed consent system. If you email me, I'll send you some information about. It's really not the presumed consent, it's the structure of how they deal with brain dead people in hospitals. But reason why I don't think presumed consent will work here, it's a socialistic concept, and I think will probably work better in socialistic countries where they do things for the masses that benefit everyone. In the U.S., we're very individual focused. We want our rights. We want to decide on what we do. So I don't think it'll ever take hold in the U.S. And just to recap quickly, being able to donate is not a miracle and not a 1 in a million situation. That it's gotten the matching process has gotten much easier. Paired exchanges are there for people who are not compatible. And again, these non-directed donors are saving a tremendous amount of lives, and that really could be a game changer. But there is something we can do now. We have a successful program. Living donation is a successful way of helping people. The challenge is that we are just not getting enough people to step up to donate. So either one of these slides, either this one or that one, the timing isn't so critical because then I go to a Q&A. But you really, at the end of your presentation, and what I found this is really quite effective, is I ask people to raise their hand again if they learn something about living donation that's really quite surprising, that they were totally unaware of before this presentation. And pretty much everyone raises their hand and kind of reinforces that we need to do this on a regular basis. Then I'll throw it open to a Q&A. I'll ask the person if we have enough time to do that, if just to make sure. And I'll also ask, and this has become an excellent source of speaking at other clubs, is the way these fraternal groups work is they usually have weekly meetings, and attendance is a badge of honor for them. So let's say they're meeting on Thursdays for lunch and they can't make it this week, they have an appointment, they're sick, whatever. They will try and go to another club's meeting and they will get credit for full attendance. So at many fraternal groups, you can ask if there are any guests, and if you feel, you say to them, if you think this is something that your club would like to learn about, it would be my pleasure to speak to you and work that out. You can ask for their business card, you can give them yours, and work out getting a referral. It really is a good way of getting additional clubs to speak at. You can print up cards. We can talk about something like that in the future. If you want, let me know. I'll mail you some of my cards, my business card, and you can write your information on that. My business card has a flip side. On the other side, it just gives our mission. and it's used for many people who are having a fundraiser or some luncheon or dinner or something for someone in need of a kidney transplant, and they want to pass out some information or who they can contact. I'll send them cards. They ask for 25 or 50 cards, or whatever, and I mail them to them, and they've used to hand them out. And I've gotten calls from a few people who want to learn more about it. On the call today, we've got donors, recipients, we've got people who are just interested in helping. I'm also speaking to a few other organizations. They might be interested in adopting something like this. Like I said, there is no national program for educating the public about living donation. And the OPOs don't want to get involved in living donation. I can talk about that a little bit more for those who want to stay on. I'd be glad to do that. And OPOs are now, I've spoken to 3 already. They are no longer educating the public. They're no longer asking for volunteers to go out and talk about a deceased donation or trying to register people to be a deceased donor. Basically, they're saying it's not cost effective. They stopped it. My OPO stopped it. And I kind of agree with they are probably not the right people to do this. I think Donate Life I think they have a better structure for doing this because, they make their money, OPOs that is, make their money by getting deceased donor organs to transplant hospitals. And so that's their primary focus. So it'll be interesting to see what happens in the next little bit. I've spoken to people at Donate Life. Some of those people don't even know that the OPOs have stopped doing this, and it'll be a challenge. We'll see what happens with that as time goes by. So we've got donors, we've got recipients, and others on the call. I think we also have not sure now, someone who needs a kidney transplant. Okay. And I want to allow those people, if you're in need of a kidney transplant, to make these presentations also. And my thought process is that at the end of the presentation, right before Q&A, they can say very briefly that, and I'm one of those 100,000 people who need a kidney transplant. I'm on dialysis. I'm not on dialysis. I've been waiting. Very, very brief, 2-3 sentences describing their situation. If it goes further, I think that organizations will object to having someone use their platform in this way. We'll have to learn from it. I never used it for that. And since this is a national program, they might object. So we'll need to learn from this and see how it is accepted and what might develop from it. Welcome your thoughts about it also if you have any. Let's see, anything else on that slide? There's a text box over here where you can put your information, contact information that's there. Let's see what else. Also, if you find the presentation that's short and you'd like more information, I have more slides and more information that we can add. Maybe I'll send that out at some point in time. But I think this is a 15, maybe 20-minute presentation. So that's it for my side.